It's been around a month since a new wave of violence began in the Indian-controlled Kashmir. Over 60 people have lost their lives so far. The violence erupted after a pro-independence leader was killed by Indian armed forces. Since then, the region has been the scene of clashes and protests, which shows no sign of abating.
The protesters are still taking to streets and demanding a comprehensive and lasting solution to the crisis in the region.
On Friday, authorities reimposed curfew and restrictions in Srinagar and several other cities in Kashmir to prevent protests, but fresh clashes still occurred at more than 24 places. Protesters marched to a United Nations office of Kashmir. The Indian troops fired tear gas and used batons to disperse the demonstrators. For many people, it is now or never situation, and the impact is prominent on the streets.
So many Kashmiris have lost their lives, and until today, the region continues to be occupied. How long can we bear this? It is better to die fighting rather than living in occupation. Every year we're losing precious young lives, but this time we will not give up unless a solution, a permanent one, is provided.
Top pro-independence leader Saeed Ali Shah Gilani was taken into custody soon after he tried to leave his house.
New Delhi has forced Kashmir into this situation, and unless India does not resolve this matter, it will face similar situations. We will not let the sacrifices of our youth to go waste. India must come up with a solution.
Kashmiris have long demanded the right to self-determination based on UN resolutions. Decades of unrest claimed tens of thousands of lives in the region. New Delhi blames Pakistan of instigating violence in Kashmir. However, Pakistan denies, saying it only provides the moral and diplomatic support to the ongoing Kashmir freedom struggle. Shahanabat.
Let's talk about the
Press
Democratic
TV,
Convention. So you won the ratings war
Kashmir.
in the last night. Hillary Clinton's
by
speech,
millions, George, by millions.
couple
right?
million, it's true.
3.
Hillary Clinton's speech, 22 direct mentions of your name, 78 references, very tough, including this one hit on your temperament. A man you can bait with a tweet is not a man we can trust with nuclear weapons. She quoted Jackie Kennedy, suggesting you're a little man moved by fear and pride.
She's a very dishonest person. I have one of the great temperaments. I have a winning temperament. She has a bad temperament. She's weak. We need a strong temperament. And that's all it is. I have a strong temperament. I know how to win.
Polls do show some concern about this, that whether you can be trusted with the nuclear codes.
Well, I think that's probably because Hillary, that's all they talk about is temperament. I think I have a great temperament. I beat 16 very talented people, and I've never done this before. You don't do that with a bad temperament. I'm leading her in the polls, as you probably have noticed, and I think I have a great temperament. I have a temperament where I know how to win. She doesn't know how to win. She's not a winner. She doesn't know how to win. And this country, if they choose her, this country will not be in good shape. She said other things in her speech that were, really wrong. She said Donald Trump, during the campaign, didn't know how to campaign or something. In the meantime, I beat 16 people, and I'm beating her. She lies a lot, and she should tell the truth. I honestly believe if she told the truth, because she made some reference to my campaigning, I've had a flawless campaign. You'll be writing books about this campaign, and yet she's criticizing my campaign. Now, her campaign, she couldn't beat Bernie. Okay.
Well, she did beat him.
Well, barely. And there's questions even about that, but barely. And if you look at what's going on in terms of unity, the Bernie people are angry. They're angry. He was angry. What was amazing to me is when she was talking about Bernie last night, the camera was on him, and he was angry. It almost looks like he has buyer's remorse. Like
Hank Williams sang about jambalaya and crawfish pie and filet gumbo.
Jambalaya, crawfish pie, and filet gumbo.
But it's not all big fun on the bayou.
Well, this is the autopsy report of Mary Vale.
Investigative reporter Jerry Mitchell has been dredging up a secret that folks here in Lake Charles have been whispering about for a half-century. The death of Mary Horton Vale while out on a boat with her husband Felix in 1962. Ruled by the coroner an accidental death. But now it's all being reeled up through the depths of time into the daylight. Did his friends and the people around believe the story that he had been out fishing?
The people I talked to didn't believe it. His neighbor, who was a fisherman, he was like, I never went fishing with Felix. He had a water skiing boat. He didn't have a fishing boat.
The local Lake Charles American press covering Mary's death, the search for her body, shadows of doubt falling on her husband even back then. Deputies said Felix had been unfaithful to Mary. Her brother, Will Horton, says she was ready to leave him.
Even though back then divorce was an ugly word to use and looked down upon, I think she was leaning strongly in that direction when she died.
With Mary lost in the river, you might think Felix would be frantic to find help. But deputies say he took the time to go miles downriver.
According to the deputy's report, he passed a lighted tugboat, didn't wave it, hey, you know, I need help. My wife's just drowned. And there were other lighted places, but he went more than 5 miles all the way back to Lake Charles.
Before he said anything?
Yeah, before he sought help.
And then there was the life insurance, always the life insurance. 2 policies worth $500,000 in today's money. One taken out, paid in full, just months before. And then 2 days after she disappeared, Mary's body is recovered, still dressed in her sorority sweatshirt.
Where they found her body was about where her body went down. It's right up here on the right.
In his quest to find out what really happened to Mary, Mitchell discovers that most of the police records have vanished. In fact, the most important evidence in the case came from a civilian who was on one of the boats that found Mary's body. 2 gruesome photos.
These are photographs he had held on to for more than 50 years.
These photographs raise 1,000 questions. The odd positioning of the body, the existence of oil stains on her clothes. Experts later say it does not seem to fit with a drowning. And perhaps most importantly, the photos reveal something quite dramatic that to investigators today make Mary's death look less like an accident and more like a murder.
She has a scarf in her mouth, 4 inches into her mouth. And there's a bruise on the back of her head. The theory of the deputies at the time was that Felix Vale may have hit his wife with an oar.
Mary's brother Will says Felix seemed to handle the catastrophe remarkably well.
If I'd have been in that situation, I'd have gone running to my wife's parents saying, oh, forgive me, please, I'm so sorry. I should have never put in that boat, it's all my fault. I never saw anything remotely similar to that from him at all. And that was the first warning sign, I guess you could say, that I saw.
Instead, what was his attitude?
He was somber, but he was silent.
Mary's sorority sister Judy Turney drove Felix to his wife's funeral.
He just seemed to be very flippant and not in mourning at all.
And here's something that still galls. Even after Felix collected insurance money, he failed to pay the funeral home.
He got money, enough to cover the funeral, and never put a penny towards the funeral. His own wife's funeral.
Felix was arrested for 3 days.
I think we all suspected Felix from the get-go.
The prosecutor brought the case to a grand jury, but then dropped it, and Felix Vale moved on with his life until his past and Jerry Mitchell caught up with him 50 years later, finding a damaging witness.
He just started talking here about out of the clear up school about Mary and calling her his ex-wife and
Wesley Turnage. He says on the way to work one day, a year after Mary died, Felix told him something so bold and incriminating, investigators had to hear it for themselves.
he said, well, that damn wanted another baby. Thought it might help save our marriage, but said I didn't want the one I got and I sure didn't want another one. He said, I fixed that damn she won't never have another one. And right then I knew that I was sitting beside a murderer.
It wasn't just Wesley Turnage. Mitchell found other witnesses who say Felix Vale confided in them. The reporter led prosecutors to Robert Fremont, who befriended Vale in Southern California during the late 1960s.
He talked about something about a lake and a boat and, all this stuff, and, he killed his first wife. I thought it was maybe some kind of BS story, but the second time he told me it was very graphic, and it really troubled me.
What did he say?
It sounded like he whacked her on the head and threw her in the water.
Unfortunately, neither man reported those conversations to police at the time, and Felix went on to marry again. What are the chances something suspicious might happen to his new wife? On a boat, on a river, a man and a woman, husband and wife, gone fishing. That's the story. But night is coming, and one of them is about to lose a life. So we're getting close here?
Yeah, we're getting close. This is about a mile from it.
Before this mystery ends, there will be 3 missing women. All last seen alive with the most unlucky of husbands. 3 lost women, forgotten, but for a fearless private eye in Texas.
I'm a hands-on girl, you know.
With a burr under her saddle and a recorder in her bra.
You've had a lot of women.
I don't know.
A relentless reporter from Mississippi.
This is my lair. This is where I work on my computer and work on cold cases.
And a grieving mother who got a crazy idea and just could not let it go.
It just feels like this is my duty to make this happen.
The very first thing she asked me was, would you be interested in writing about a serial killer living in Mississippi? And I was kind of like, yeah.
Lake Charles, Louisiana, down by the Gulf of Mexico. Cajun country, Spanish moss, and long-legged egrets. A tale tangled as old fishing line, best unraveled by boat, cruising through a ship graveyard.
It's right up here on the right.
Our guide, investigative reporter Jerry Mitchell. He's already had a long career uncovering Old Testament evil in the Deep South. Stories like the Mississippi burning murders that led to the conviction of Klansmen.
There it is. This is it. Okay, this is where it is.
His latest work appears in the USA Today network documentary series called Gone. It's about the case of Mary Horton Vale, haunting the Louisiana Delta since 1962. On the radio, Ray Charles Can't Stop Loving You.
I've directed that the following initial steps.
In the White House, President Kennedy on the brink of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And soaring somewhere high overhead, John Glenn, the first American in orbit. Back on Earth in Lake Charles, Mary Horton and Felix Vale have only just begun living the life. All smiles in home movies, the dashing Felix sporting a fedora just a few months before it all went bad. Mary had been the high school homecoming queen in Eunice, Louisiana. Tiaras and parades. Her home movies reveal a real looker with Southern charm. One of her biggest admirers, Mary's little brother, Will Horton.
Mary was one of those people, when she walked into the room, she made everybody feel good.
She was kind of this larger-than-life girl that everybody loved.
She was a beauty, for sure.
Yes.
Classmates and sorority sisters remember those college days at McNeese State with Mary like it was yesterday.
Not only pretty on the outside, but pretty on the inside. People really were drawn to her.
Felix works in a chemical plant, and he has plenty of chemistry after work, too.
Yeah. Very nice-looking man.
Yeah, she just kind of fell in love from the get-go.
I had one woman tell me that Felix Vale looked like he'd been kissed by heaven. He had this charismatic aura.
Funny thing about Felix, though.
I think Felix was the bad boy.
Mary's friends say they didn't like him much. Can't remember why.
For some reason, we didn't care for him. I do remember that.
Now in the fall of '62, after a year of marriage, Mary and Felix have a baby, Billy, and some unexpected good news. And they thought, or she thought she was pregnant again?
She did. She thought she was pregnant again, told her friends she thought she was pregnant.
Were they happy at the beginning, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. The family was beginning to start, you know.
But behind those backyard smiles, something dark. One of her sorority sisters remembers a mysterious premonition.
I remember in the dorm that Mary had always told us she was going to die young by drowning. I've never forgotten that.
One Sunday evening, Felix gets the notion to take Mary fishing out on the river. They stay out late, past dark. Something until this day her brother says he can't figure out.
Can you tell me a little bit about the fear of the water?
You could go in a swimming pool. She was fine as long as she could see the bottom.
You call that dark water down here, right?
Dark water.
And that means you can't see through it.
And yet there's Mary. You can see her in your mind's eye all those years ago, dutifully cruising up that corkscrew of a river with Felix. Then Mary's fear comes tragically true. Felix describes a freak accident. He says Mary spots a stump in the water. He swerves to miss it, throwing her into the river.
She saw a stump, said something, he whipped the boat, she fell out. That was his story. And then he dove in the water and tried to save her, couldn't save her.
The young mother, so lively and loved, taken by the river, vanishing in that dark water of the Louisiana Delta.